Welcome guys, this is just a few in-depth tips for Warpips. It could quite easily be missed, so I'm going to break them up into 3 different categories. So I'll go through some strategical tips and some tactical tips and then some unique tips for individual units. So attack and defense mode, that's these buttons. Now, you can use them with hotkeys. This is E, and that's Q. So you can hold them down while you can simultaneously press all these different buttons, rather than using the mouse to hold these down, and then you can't press these buttons at the same time. So Q and E. Now, what are they good for? This gives you a huge range boost, and it also gives you about 75% less damage taken, even when you're standing in the open. So you'll survive almost 4 times as long while you've got this button held down. So fantastic this is. This gives you increased damage. It's actually increased accuracy, but it translates as increased damage. And a speed boost. This also gives you the same speed boost, but with this, your men usually try to hang back behind cover, where this is a speed boost where it tells your men to run forward. So this is more appropriate as a speed boost, really, to run forward. So the next thing that's important is this lasts about twice as long as this. So again, this is a lot better than this in that sense, because it lasts longer, a lot longer. So each one of these buttons is useful for different items. This button's better when used with the heavy gunner and vehicles, because with the heavy gunner they don't try and hide behind cover, so it doesn't spread your men out. They don't waste time moving about, and the increased range with the heavy gunner is massive. You can outrange virtually anything in the game when using the defense mode with the heavy gunner. The only exception to that rule, I think, is the enemy sharpshooter. Where if you try to use defense mode with, say, Warpips or Pipsqueaks, they'll all try and get behind different parts of cover. Your men will end up spreading out, and when you let go of this, they'll all be spread out, and the enemy will usually be blobbed up, so they'll be able to take on each one of your spread out units individually, taking them out bit by bit. Okay, so defense mode, good for heavy gunner. Attack mode, good for Pipsqueaks and Warpips. So the next thing that's important with these attack and defense is when you're attacking the enemy objective. Counterintuitively, you don't use, it's not so wise to use the attack mode when attacking the enemy objective. The best button is actually to use the defense mode. There's 2 reasons to this. One is your men last four times as long with the minus 75% damage taken. But also, when you are approaching the enemy objective, if you press the defense mode, you can first of all shoot it from further away, but also you can get your men to split into 2 different groups. So some of your men will shoot the enemy objective, and some of your men will hang back and not shoot it. Now that might sound bad at first, because you want all of your men shooting the enemy objective because you want to kill it. Well, not really, because if all of your men are shooting the enemy objective, they're locked onto it now. So when the enemy spawn in some troops, they're going to shoot at your men, and your men are not going to shoot them back. They are locked onto the enemy objective. They won't shoot spawning in people. But the men that are hanging back will shoot them because they're not locked onto the objective. So, using defense mode when attacking the enemy objective lets you survive longer and gives you cover against the incoming spawning enemy. So it's just much better. Much better. This red button here, this is the emergency cache button, and this opens up when the enemy come close to your base and you haven't got men protecting your base. So this opens up then. What it does is you effectively trade out one of your pips for 50 cash. Now, it might not sound like a great trade, a pip for 50 cash, but the pip that you trade out is only temporary. You get it back after 2 minutes. So effectively, you're just gaining cash for free because you get this back. It's like renting your pip out, basically. This is always a good thing to do, to have one of your pips permanently rented out, because it basically just means that you're getting an extra 50 cash every 2 minutes. It's not a huge bonus, but it makes a big difference, especially at the start of the game. Okay, so the reason that this is so important is at the beginning of some maps you get rushed by certain enemy types like the buggy and the jeep and the Tanya. And so what I recommend during campaign is to go for recruitment center first so you can unlock these 4 pips. Now, most people won't go for recruitment center first. They'll go for infantry upgrades or maybe some other thing like the attack boost. But during the rush missions where you get rushed down, infantry upgrades and attack boost and veterancy upgrades, things like that, aren't going to help you in this situation. But if you add 4 extra pips from the recruitment center, you can trade them out for cash. Now this will help you when you get rushed down, because you can get 50 cash for each one of these pips. So you can effectively start the game off with 200 extra cash that you wouldn't have had if you hadn't have bought the recruitment center upgrades. So really, the reason you take it is not for the 4 pips to use for deploying troops. You're taking it as a backup in case you get rushed and you need some cash. That's why you take it first. Okay. As before, when I was talking about when you're attacking the enemy objective, your men lock onto the enemy objective, which is why I said use the defense button, so some of your men hang back to attack the spawning in enemy. Well, the same rule applies for when the enemy is attacking your objective. They lock on to your objective and don't shoot your spawning in units. They can still accidentally shoot them, but with stray bullets, but they don't target them. So, when dealing with rushes, it's best to let the buggy or the jeep actually start attacking your base before you deploy your troops. So, say for example a buggy's coming in and you deploy before he started attacking your base. You deploy 3 pipsqueaks. That buggy comes in, kills all 3 of them. They've hardly done any damage. The buggy then comes in and starts killing your base. Your pipsqueaks are now on cooldown, so you can't deploy anymore. It's the start of the mission, so you haven't got hardly any cash. You might be able to deploy 1 or 2 Warpips if you deployed them earlier on with your pipsqueaks, they probably got killed as well. If you haven't upgraded your recruitment centre, you might still be only on 2 pips. You're in trouble. You're stuck. But if you let the Jeep come in and attack your base first before you deploy, once you deploy, he's locked onto your base and you can kill the Jeep or the buggy without them targeting you and killing you. You can basically kill virtually any rush from a vehicle at the beginning of the game with just 3 pipsqueaks and maybe 1 or 2 Warpips. So now, instead of that coming in and wrecking everything that you've deployed and you haven't got any cash or pip slots, just by changing them 2 or 3 different tactics or strategies, just by changing them, you've now changed the tide of the battle from having nothing and no options and losing to killing the rush without taking any casualties and having a nice little blob on the field ready to walk up unopposed. So it's tiny little things like that that can make a huge difference in a game. As you can see, they're not attacking my men. They're just still attacking the objective. So I just killed them all really quickly. If I had have deployed these earlier before they started attacking my base, it would have been a lot closer fight. They would have killed quite a few. I would have ended up wasting cash. So it's just a good strategy to let them attack your base first and then deploy a giant blob. So like now, I wouldn't be adding more troops because they're not in a blob. They'll end up getting spread out. So you just wait for everything to die and then wait for the enemy to attack your base again and then deploy in a giant blob. And there you go. A lot better success than if you just tried to bring everything out bit by bit. What to spend your combat points on. Now, this will vary. There is no global rule that applies every time that you stick to and never deviate from. This will change depending on your loadout. It'll change depending on the mission. So you'll have to figure most of that out for yourself, but I will give a couple of tips basically. So say for example in the first island, you can complete most missions with just Warpips alone. Well, if you want to, like, if I just show you the upgrades for the Warpips, you've got increase accuracy by a small amount and increase range by a small amount. Now it takes 9 CP to get them 2 tiny little buffs, which is a lot. It's going to take you a long time to get 9 CP. Alternatively, you could have spent that 9 CP on pip supply, got 9 plus however many pips you've already got unlocked, Warpips onto the battlefield, and they'll just swarm over everything. Having 11 plus pips on the battlefield, Warpips, is a lot better than just having 2, but having them 2 with small range and accuracy buffs. So it all depends on what the mission's like to what you spend your combat points on. So say for example, see this green bar here? That is where you're going to try and aim your pushes. That's where you want to try and finish the missions off. You don't want to try and finish a mission off during a striped bar. You want to try and finish a mission off during the green bars. And so if you look at the maps in the mission info beforehand, you'll be able to judge where you are going to try and aim your push. So that will then determine what you want to spend your combat points on. If the green bar is at the beginning and there's a big strike bar at the end, you're going to want to try and finish the mission early before you get to the striped bar. So you're not going to spend your points on upgrades, on veterancy. You're going to spend it on pip supply and maybe on some cash boost. And then you're going to try and finish the mission as early as you can. If, like for this example, the green bar is towards the end and the striped bar is at the beginning, you might consider taking the veterancy first, because you know that it's going to be a long mission. You know you're going to get a lot of CP to play with. So you might want to spend 1 or 2 CP on these pip supply, but you might want to focus on this first in that case. So it all depends what mission you're playing, what units you're using, and you'll figure it out after a bit of practice. The most important thing about vehicles is getting them on the field as fast as possible. So most people, when they first start playing and they've got a vehicle, they don't want to spend the CP on unlocking it because they want to upgrade the veterancy, because they want to get more pipsqueaks, for example. It's a bad idea. If you're taking in vehicles, you want to get them vehicles out as fast as you can. So you start the mission off with 1 CP on general difficulty. So the first thing you want to do, deploy enough men to be able to unlock your vehicles. Don't spend any CP until your vehicles are unlocked. And then once your vehicles are unlocked, you can then use the vehicles all the time and then accompany them with some other things as well. But you basically want 1 vehicle on the field at all times. They pair really well with pipsqueaks because you don't have to pay for pipsqueaks. So if a vehicle costs 3, you can get 3 pipsqueaks. If you get 3 pipsqueaks, it's now on cooldown. So you want to always have enough for the vehicle plus being able to deploy all of your pipsqueaks in one go. If you only had 5 pip supply, you'd end up with 1 pipsqueak. You'd only be able to deploy 2 out of the 3. You'd end up with 1. They wouldn't die immediately, but when they do die, they might be over here. You can only deploy 1 now, and then it's on cooldown, and you've got to wait ages for the cooldown again. So always make sure you've got enough pip supply to be able to deploy 1 vehicle and all 3 of your pipsqueaks if you're taking in pipsqueaks. This is a good example. I've got 2 heroes coming in here. Now if I was concentrating over here and I was fighting, I might not have noticed these 2 heroes coming in. And now I'm in a bit of trouble because they're on top of me and I didn't even realise that they were coming in. Well, if I'd have been looking over here, I would have seen them spawn and I would have had that much extra time to react and think about what I was going to do. So this tip is about not just having tunnel vision and focusing on what's happening right here. Try to spread your view around and look around the battlefield, particularly in their back line, to make sure you know what's coming in and you're fully prepared for it. You don't want to be caught off guard just because you were focusing on one thing and you weren't looking around. Exploding barrels. You can either try and explode them offensively, trying to blow up the enemy as they're walking past, or you can just try and be defensive about it and just try and clear them out of your way rather than try to get extra kills off them. So at the start of each mission, if you're taking in drones or sometimes rockets, but obviously you'd have to aim a rocket, it's not very easy. But if you're taking in drones, have a look around the battlefield, try and identify where all of the explosives are, and just blow them all up when you get the opportunity. It doesn't matter if you're taking out any enemies while you're doing it, you're just making sure that they're not there for when you advance and you don't get blown up by them, because the last thing you want is to get squad wiped just by a barrel when you could have just took it out for 10 cash. So just get rid of all of your obstacles, all of the exploding barrels, all of your hazards. Oil derricks. Now, oil derricks are dead tempting to just get down straight away so you can start earning cash straight away. Don't do that. They'll get destroyed and they might not even pay for themselves, never mind give you a profit, while at the same time put you in danger of getting base camped, spawn camped, whatever you want to call it, and they're just really risky, especially if you're a bit inexperienced and you don't know the best way to use them. So with things like oil derricks and pump jacks, you don't want to start putting them down until you've got a solid front line. Now, I don't even recommend taking them into missions unless you've got vehicles. So that's my first advice with oil derricks. Don't use them unless you're taking vehicles. If you do take vehicles, don't place them until you've got a vehicle out. You need to protect your oil derricks. So wait until you've got a vehicle, preferably quite far away from your base, so your front line is quite far away. So if things go wrong, you've still got time to get another vehicle out before that event is then spilled over into your economy. So get a tank out, then get your oil derricks down, and you'll be much better for it. Gas. Any grenade, not just gas, but grenades can trigger mines. So if you haven't got any other way to trigger mines, then using the grenades as an alternative is a great way to do it. Also, they are available right at the beginning of the game. So you can start destroying landmines right at the beginning of the game. You don't have to wait for a cooldown, say you would do with drones. So that's another reason that grenades are good against landmines. Okay, grenades, mines, they can bounce between them, so try and trigger as many mines as you can in one go. I think I missed one there, but other than missing that one, is that another one there? I think that's a grenade. So other than missing that one that's just there, I've just taken out all of the enemy mines right at the beginning of the game using 15 cash, and because it's tear gas mines, not mines, grenades, I'm also killing all of the incoming enemies. Just by taking that one item, I've just prevented massive issues in the future if you didn't take anything to destroy the mines. The next thing is mines. Hardly anyone likes mines. They don't use them. They don't think they're worth it. Well, mines are amazing. They just require a little bit of thought and a little bit of practice, that's all. They cost 15 cash. If, for example, an enemy jeep costs the same as a friendly jeep, then the enemy jeep is worth 110. You can destroy a jeep with one mine. So you can, for 15 cash, you can destroy something that's worth 110. All you need to do is place it in the correct position. So, if a jeep's coming in, you haven't got turrets this time, you've got mines instead. If a jeep's coming in, you start shooting your infantry. You know that the jeep came in at this angle, it's probably going to carry on going at that angle. If the jeep's up here, you know it's probably going to carry on going up there. Same applies down here. so you know around about where the jeep's going to go. So you place your mines in them sections where you think it's going to go. Place 2 or 3 down rather than just one. So it costs 45, but obviously only one of them are going to detonate, so the mines will remain there for the rest of the game in case any more jeeps or anything come through. And you can destroy a dangerous vehicle for hardly any points, hardly any cash. Alternatively, you can just be really safe and put an entire strip all the way down one part of the battlefield, and then that'll prevent anything from being able to get past without detonating. If you let a jeep and a group of men attack your men, once they've killed all of your infantry, you know the jeep is the fastest unit out of all of the enemy units there, so the jeep is going to be the first one to reach this line of mines. So you know that the jeep's going to be the one that triggers the mines, and so it's practically guaranteed that you're going to destroy the jeep. Where if you try and put the mines really close to where the enemy is, the infantry might trigger the mines before the jeep get there. So place the mines a little bit further behind your front line before your infantry die. Last thing about mines is the enemy rockets can explode your mines. So don't use mines on missions where the enemy has rockets. If you place some mines down and one of your tanks is on top of your mines, if they fire a rocket and it hits and explodes your mines, it will blow your tank up. So it's just not worth taking mines if the enemy has rockets. A lot of people hate tow turrets. They think that they're terrible and they always miss. Well, they only always miss because you're using them wrong, I'm afraid. If you wait for a vehicle to come in and you've got some infantry on the field, that vehicle will stop to shoot your infantry. Now you place the tow turret. The vehicle is stopped, it's stationary. The tow turret's got 100% accuracy against stationary targets. It can't miss. Now, it can hit an obstacle. If you put a tow turret somewhere where there's an obstacle in between it and the thing that you're shooting, it can still hit that obstacle. But that's your fault for putting the tow turret there. So wait for the vehicle to stop moving before you place it, and choose a spot where there's no obstacle in the way if you can. If there is no spot, obviously you can still put one down with an obstacle in the way. There's a chance that it won't hit the obstacle, but just use a bit of thought before you place one down. Don't place it down before the vehicles stop moving, and try to place it down with a nice clear line of sight. Once you have placed the tow turret down, they're really weak. They've got a lot of they've hardly got any health, so you're going to want to try and protect them. So say for example you put a tow turret down here, you're going to want to make sure that your front line is in front of that tow turret so it doesn't get shot. So once you've placed one down, you now know that this is where your front line is. If another vehicle comes in and you place another tow turret there, you now know that your front line is here, and so forth. And then you shouldn't be losing tow turrets really, if you can help it. Obviously, once you've got your men to around here and they die, they're going to have to start all the way back here again to spawn. So by the time they've reached there again, the enemy might have overtaken one of your tow turrets, or maybe even two of them. So in that case, if you lose all of your men, you might lose one or two tow turrets. But while you've got a blob going on, you shouldn't be placing a tow turret anywhere near the front line of the blob. You want to place it a little bit behind, so it can keep shooting without taking any shots in return. And tow turrets do a tremendous amount of damage incredibly quickly, as long as you keep them alive. It's as simple as that, really. How to handle howitzers. Now, I know a lot of people struggle against howitzers and they don't really know how to combat them. Well, there's 2 or 3 different ways. So I'll try and go through all of the different ways that you can combat them. The most obvious way is taking drones. So I think a howitzer will be destroyed off 4 drones, so 10 cash each. So that costs 40 cash to destroy a howitzer. But there's a couple of drawbacks with using drones. One is there's a minute and 30 timer on them, so you can't just use them immediately. And the other is they can hit obstacles. So on some missions, the howitzers are positioned where you can't hit them with drones, or you can hit them, but they're very hard to aim, and they will hit a few obstacles. So this isn't the best usage, but it's one of the best ways to combat howitzers. The better one of combating howitzers is using the IC-7 Bulwark missile. It's a guaranteed hit, can't hit obstacles, but they're incredibly rare, so you don't really want to be wasting them on missions that aren't particularly difficult. You want to really save your IC-7s for the final few missions of the game. So I recommend taking in drones for beating howitzer missions. But if you just so happen to not have any drones, either you've used them all in previous missions or you've just been unlucky and you didn't get any as rewards, well, there is one other way that you can quite easily combat howitzers, and this is the one that I wanted to bring up because it's very easy to miss. It's not pointed out to you anywhere, so you have to work it out for yourself, and that is vehicles, well, not necessarily vehicles, but units of 1 don't get targeted by the howitzer. It just doesn't shoot. The howitzer is designed to attack groups of units. So if there's only 1 unit on the field, the howitzer just simply doesn't shoot at all. So you can just bring 1 unit onto the field, and then your problem of the howitzer is now solved. It doesn't do anything. As soon as you deploy other things, it'll start shooting because it's targeting a clump. But if you've only got 1 thing on the field, it just won't do anything. So if you can't take in drones, try and take in vehicles, with one exception. I will tell you the exception so you don't ruin one of your runs. Don't take in the LRV. The LRV spawns units, and as soon as it spawns its units, the howitzer is going to target it. It's going to splat all of your men, it's going to hit your vehicle, and your vehicle can only take 2 hits before it dies. So the next time it spawns any units, or even if just a couple of men shoot at it a couple of times, your vehicle's dead. It's done nothing. So the worst thing that you can bring on a howitzer mission is the LRV. So I'll warn you in advance, just don't bring it. Okay, so vehicles, drones, or Pumas and tanks, I should say. Pumas, tanks, and drones. That's how you combat howitzers. Now, if you haven't got any of them 3, you might think you're a bit stuck, but you can still get around it. It's just not very easy. So, say for example, you can deploy 1 thing. Well, 2 things you actually need. It'd be 1 thing if I had upgraded this. So I'll just upgrade ready to demonstrate again. Okay, you deploy one thing, the howitzer shoots at it, well, 2 units together, then you deploy everything else. Now the howitzer, now you've got a bit of time between the howitzer's shots for these units to then be able to do some work before it shoots again. So during this time, while things die, you can keep spawning units gradually, bit by bit, so they spread out a little bit. Try not to spawn them too close together. And then as they're spawning, the howitzer's going to shoot again eventually. It's going to wipe some of your men out, but because you've been spawning everything a little bit further apart, it's not going to do quite so much damage. So although this is not exactly the best tactic, it's your fallback plan if you haven't got drones, pumas or tanks. Another thing is, you can take these tow turrets with you, out of desperation more than anything if you need to. And the good thing with tow turrets and ordinary turrets is they don't take up a pip supply, so you can deploy them even with men on the field. So say for example, I'll wait for this to shoot, I'll see where it lands, then I'll deploy a tow turret and the tow turret will shoot. Yep, unfortunately it hit an obstacle, but that's just how it is. It'll shoot again in a second and it might take out the howitzer. There you go. So there you go, 2 or 3 different ways to destroy howitzer missions. Your resource management. You're going to want to make sure that you don't just use all of your cards in one go on the early missions. Try and figure out the least amount of cards that you can get away with for each mission. So for the first island, you'll be able to complete a large portion of the islands just by using the Warpips. And you'll probably need to add maybe a tactician or a shield pip in on some of the harder ones. Maybe a base turret on a couple of them maybe. But the least amount that you can get away with will help you in the future for later missions. You want to make sure that by the time you get to Island 2 in particular, but also Island 3, you want to make sure that you've got enough units that you can play around with. This thing, if it fills up, you're going to be in trouble. So you can complete this final mission on each island before this fills up. That's what I recommend for new players. Don't let it fill up before you finish the final mission on the island. Once it fills up, it basically you get super soldiers that are about 50% more speed, aim, range I should say, and accuracy. So they're like 50% harder. They're a lot to deal with if you don't know what you're doing. So try to finish the mission, the island first before that happens. So the best way to do that is to go all the way up to the final mission and not play it quite yet. So go all the way, carve a path through, get to there, and then you'll see how many more missions you can fit in before it reaches maximum. So if, say for example, I completed this mission now, the enemy bar would be there. I would know that I can play 1, 2 more missions before it fills up. So then I'd start looking to see what the best rewards are. Warbucks, and obviously things like the heavy gunner, the base turret, whatever else that you like the look of. So that's why go to the end first, then work backwards for the best rewards. Like I say, I don't recommend trying to do skulls before you've completed the. I call it skulls. I should say max enemy army strength. I call them skulls because they have a skull over their head when they reach that. But complete the game first before you start trying to attempt these. Okay, mission info. This is really important. One of the most important things in the game if you're playing on general difficulty, because you only have one life on general difficulty, so if you mess up once, it's game over and you've got to start again. So, mission info, check it every time you're about to play a mission. It's got some important information on. Most important is the length of the map. So, I think it's this mission is only 70. It's a tiny, tiny little mission. A lot of items will not be very good on a 70-meter map. The sniper, for example. You're not going to get a chance to use a sniper, he's going to get killed. The map's just far too short for him. I won't give any clues away as to what are the best things other than that. But some missions are 350 meters long. So 70 up to 350 makes a huge difference on what you want to take into the battle. So make sure you check this before every single mission so you don't take in the wrong equipment and lose a run just because you didn't click this button. Next thing is the difficulty. Now this only tells you how many of these are going to be coming in, not how powerful these are. So for example, you can have two missions with identical loadout, enemy lineup, but one of them might say 2-star and one might say 10-star. Well, they've got exactly the same lineup, so all this is doing is telling you how many of these are going to be coming into the battle. So that'll give you a good idea of how difficult it is in terms of quantity rather than quality. Next thing, really important, is this bar. These striped sections will tell you when you're going to get a large amount of enemies coming in at you. So on some maps, I'll see if I can find one for you. Like this one, for example. This striped bar is right at the beginning of the mission. So you know that you're going to get rushed down really early on before you've really had a chance to prepare. So if you look at the enemy lineup, you can see that on this mission they've got a jeep as well. There's a high chance that during this striped bar you're going to get a jeep rushing in at you. I call them rushes because they happen right at the beginning of the map, so you've got like a jeep rush, or a buggy rush, or a Tanya rush. So you're going to have a tough time, and you're going to need to plan accordingly. So if this bar wasn't there, and there was no striped bar until this one, you're not really going to be worried about getting rushed, so you've got more chance to prepare, so you'd probably take a different loadout. If you know you're going to get rushed, you've got to take a different loadout. So press this button to check this bar to know what you need to take into the battle. So if, say for example, I want to play this mission, but then I start looking around to see what everything else is, and that was the last thing that I checked on. But I don't actually want to play that mission, I wanted to play that one. But that was the last thing I checked. So I might have forgotten that I've changed the mission while I was checking stuff. Now I've gone onto here, I've equipped the things that I want to take in for this mission, but I forgot that while I was checking these, the last one I checked was a different mission. I didn't remember to put it back on the mission that I wanted to play. So the next tip is, once you've selected your loadout, don't just hit deploy. you might end up playing the wrong mission by accident. That also could end your run, and with only one life, you don't want to have to start again from the beginning just because you didn't press map. So, select your loadout, click map, and then make sure you're on the correct mission. Hopefully, some of these tips have been good. You might be able to use them. It's a fantastic game. I think you'll really enjoy it once if you're struggling at the beginning. Once you get over that difficulty curve, you'll really start to enjoy the game. It is fantastic. Right, thanks for joining, guys. Take care, and I'll see you soon.